Angelically is pretty easy because of the angels. Angels fly around is pretty easy again. And Autumn's hook is kind of interesting because of the hook being like kind of a reaper hook from the autumn during the harvest. So it's Autumn's hook is like harvest tool. Awareness of this is pretty difficult. It means just awareness of this, but this could be anything really. Boring as doomsday is one I remember pretty easily. Nothing is believed his broken watch, though he's beaten by foe, the foe being time. So the broken watch, his broken watch. Then he cometh back. That's pretty hard because of cometh, not the usual English that we usually talk and speak about. Cars together go. It's kind of a funny syntax of the sentence where usually you would have go before together, but it's cars together or go cars together, but it's cars together go. See first. Passively composed. That seems kind of hard because it doesn't really refer to anything else in this stanza. Passively being like the opposite of actively composed. So when I think of that, I think of it being like something that's very graceful, a passive composition, but it's passively composed as in the verb, not the noun. Curious to see. I like that one a lot because it's pretty clear. Anonymous or dwelling. That one's the only funny one with the R being. It's, sometimes you might think it's anonymous is dwelling, but I mean anonymous people are dwelling. Except I've left out the people. Duty do is pretty easy. Daylight's foes getting easier. Dumps waves is the one I have to remember. Now, make everybody's yours is kind of a nice one. It's like make everybody's love yours or make everybody's heart yours. But I left out the love or heart from make, a poetic making. No evil kisses is easy, but it's harder than I think to remember because that's the K. I mean, that's the E. So the E for there is evil. The E for the top one is everybody's, and the E for the next one, not everyone's at peace, is another E. Please love them every day. Every day is the last E. But not everyone's at peace and make everybody's yours are kind of hard, even though they're simple phrases for some reason. Please love them every day. That's a command, just like make everybody's yours. So there's two commands in that stanza. A fancy tale. That's like a fairy tale, but with fancy instead. Fill up the hour. That one's kind of hard because this one's about time, and time you can fill up, an hour of your time with some activity, like a fancy tale. A flood we fear. This one is pretty hard because there's a comma right there. It's really two statements. A flood we fear. It's metastasis where it could have been we fear a flood, but instead I wrote it in this way, and it's with the F. So this one has two F's: a flood and then fear. Of ocean's floor. That one's kind of easy, but it's a little hard as well. From gentler stuff. These are the G's. From gentler stuff, your final grief. So from gentler stuff. Oh, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. From greater stuff. From greater stuff. Greater is going to be a tough one, like tough stuff. A greater stuff. Your final grief. That means the last grief you'll ever have, and that's the final grief. So it's kind of a good thing. Your being like whoever, like you're talking to. These given lands. This one's probably the hard one of the hardest ones. These given lands. So the lands is plural. Given these. So these and lands go together, and they harmonize verbally. Gathered up for room. That's a tough one because normally I don't put like participles in there, but gathered is a participle. So gathered up for room would be how to say it, but it's harder because I don't normally think in participles. Gathered up for room, like the given lands gathered up for room. These given lands, so there's more than just one field gathered up for room, making another harvest. No final, hither's better. So I think there's another one. Oh yeah, no evil kisses. So this is the second of the no's. No final, hither's better. Probably one of the hardest ones on here. Faces on their hands, like little angels, starting off with their faces and then putting the faces into their hands. By good hearts. By good hearts should be easier, but something about it's kind of hard. Maybe because the hearts is plural. Belt him for the win is the easiest one since I already memorized that a long time ago. And it intimates more pleasure, and it's not just pleasure. I mean, it's not pleasure, but more pleasure and not pleasures. So it intimates more, it hints at more pleasure. Has importance too. Kind of goes like with whatever would have been the subject matter on a previous clause or phrase before that, but just standing on its own, it sounds kind of funny. But has importance too. This idle morning, that seems like an easy one, but I have to remember the this on it. This idle morning, nothing to do in the morning time. And idleness and the wetness, nothing to do because it's raining and there's a wetness and an idleness. And idleness in is going to be hard, the wetness. More joyful beams unite. More, as in, this is a tough one too. Joyful beams unite. So I have to remember that adjective, joyful, and that it's superlative with the more. Joyful beams unite. So I could have just put this as beams unite, but I needed the joy because this is the J section. I could have said joyful beams unite. That means technically like they make the dawn by uniting and shining upon the from the east. With royal justice. That seems like an easy one, but royal justice is something not really democratic, but coming from a royal, like a king, with royal justice. So the sun could be the king. The more joyful beams unite from the sun with royal justice, and that would be Apollo too, because Apollo in Greek is the sun, and Juno upon them. And Juno upon thou. Penury, no joy. So Juno's the J with the proper noun J. Joy is in here, joyful is in here, and justice is in here. Coming up to this one, these tied up kilowatts. Tied up these and kilowatts. I don't know how I'm going to remember tied up with kilowatts. So I guess they could be like in chords. So they could be like tied up. A night light. Night light is pretty easy to remember, but that's the night, like as a night of a round table. Sometime we know. And that's almost like another phrase from another poem. Its knowledge attained must be. Sometime we know, and then separately, its knowledge attained must be. Another participle there. So that goes with the other participle that was super hard, which I've already forgotten, but I'll remember it after a little while. Its set light knocks. Probably the silliest one in this whole batch, but we're going to take it and memorize it. Its set light knocks. I'm maybe like knocking at the door if you have an eastern door, and then the set light where it's like, western light if it's the sunset, so a set light knocks. A leaf is on your knee. That's pretty easy to remember. Just that I have to remember that's a leaf and not the leaf. And then your knee, not my knee. The Goblin language is pretty easy, meaning like a Babylonian language. Eternal Laurels is pretty easy too to remember. And the last four are your own mountain book. Just have to remember that it's intensive with own, so it's not just your mountain book, but your own mountain book. The Spicecraft on the Mountain, so that's the second mountain. A minimal person, minimal, not a miniature, but a minimal person. I might be able to memorize that if I look at it a few more times. It's a tough one, like a troll or a little elf, a minimal person or a child or a baby. And the Soul's Meteor popped. Probably the other silly one in here because of the popped, but the Soul's Meteor popped. I'll have to try to remember. I can remember probably the meteor part. Then from meteor goes pop, like fireworks, and then the Soul's Meteor. The soul goes with the meteor because it comes out of the body one of these days.